So welcome to our Connecting the Dots podcast. I'm Susan McGhee, your host for today's show and Chief Exec at Flexible Childcare Services Scotland. Today in the studio I have with me Jack Evans from Joseph Rowntree Foundation. Jack, would you like to start by telling us a little bit about yourself, your journey, what's brought you to where you are now,
Sure.
and I guess something about Joseph Rowntree and what their priorities are?
Sure. So first, thanks so much for having me on. I've been really enjoying watching the Connecting the Dots series. It's been really interesting with some great guests, so really thankful to be on. So I'm Jack. I work at the Joseph Rowntree Foundation. I've been there for about 6 years now, which feels kind of crazy. Before that, I was at the Poverty Alliance, where I worked on the Living Wage project. So that's a collaboration between the Poverty Alliance and Living Wage Foundation, where we worked with employers to kind of talk about them getting to the real living wage and their accreditation. And before that, I was in retail. So I was working in shops as an operations manager all over Scotland. So quite a change from where I am now. And at JRF, I kind of mainly focus on labour market policy related to child poverty. And the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, as some people know it as the Fruit Pastels place, that's what Joseph Rowntree is, a foundation that kind of works towards ending poverty in the UK. And we kind of do research, policy and advocacy as well.
Cool. So how did it go from fruit pastels to tackling poverty?
Well, exactly. And I think that's a story I like to talk about when you're working with businesses. So when I'm working with employers, we talk about that kind of social good that businesses can bring to their communities. And so many of the businesses that I've worked with over the years have been really into that idea of like, you make your community better by making your business better. And it's kind of mutual self-interest. But Joseph Rowntree was one of these kind of great social reformers before the kind of age of social security and the social contract like that. So Joseph Rowntree had massive factories in York producing his goods and wanted to make sure his workers were well looked after. So in fact built accommodation and built villages for his workforce. Got a New Year's work in York, and funnily enough, the wee logo on the Joseph Rowntree on the fruit pastels was a wee tree, and that kind of represents the fruit trees that Joseph Rowntree had put in to all the accommodation for his staff, so and the houses. So it wasn't just about getting them somewhere to live; it's about being somewhere good to live, where you could enjoy it with a garden and hopefully come to work all happy and healthy.
Brilliant. That's really interesting, isn't it? And it's nice to think that there have always been people that are out to do good, and that it is possible and was possible a way back to do business, but do it with a mission and be sort of socially minded and look after people as part of that.
Yeah, and you still see it. You still see lots of it, and I think that's the kind of thing we need to motivate and kind of that culture is what you need to foster in Scotland to make sure that employers are playing that part in the wider kind of progress to ending poverty and having a society that we all want to live in and grow up in as well for children.
Yeah. And we hear so much talk now around the sort of building community wealth and those kind of things, and that's exactly what that was, wasn't it? It was building within that community.
It's kind of thinking that you can kind of make a difference in your area. You can not have to sit by and watch things happen. You can get involved and change things as well. And I think that's the kind of messages that people like Joseph Rowntree, Bourneville, all those kind of social reformers, those kind of businesses back then kind of bought into. And I think you still see it today, but we need far more of it.
Definitely. Cool. Well, I wouldn't feel guilty when I buy myself a packet of fruit pastels anymore.
Or Kit Kats now, it's owned by Nestle, so it's all slightly different.
Right, okay, so slightly different, but still. Okay. I can think of all the good that was done, so perfect. Interestingly, we've been looking at some of your reports and things as we do regularly working in this sector around tackling child poverty and things, and we're talking about families working and having good accommodation and a good standard of living and things. And yet, I think it's about 3/4 of children that are living in poverty are in working families. That's correct.
That's this chart that everyone kind of can see and looks at. It kind of just keeps going up. There's more families and more families who are in work or have work in their family, but they're still in poverty. Yeah. So work is a really good route out of poverty and often prevents families from falling into poverty or supports them exiting poverty. But far too many people are in work, but also in poverty in their households. And then that's, it's about wages, of course, but it's about flexibility. It's about being able to work around your life and not having to work to kind of dictate everything, and families not being able to take on the hours maybe that they would want to take. Yeah. And it makes it really difficult. And we know also that this is heavily concentrated in certain industries as well in Scotland, which makes it really difficult.
Yeah. We see a lot of that with the parents particularly when they first come to us and they're really struggling financially and trying to get work and childcare to work together.
To sync up, yeah.
So because they just don't so often, and that families in more traditional models of childcare are paying for hours that they don't need. So there's hours of childcare they've got to be paying for when they're not actually bringing in any income for those hours, and it just pushes that beyond affordable for people, and it makes it really difficult. And of course all the other things as well, the cost of travelling to get to work and all those things, the cost of the work day, the cost of the school day if your children are in school, and trips and outings and school uniforms and all the different things that they do.
It can feel quite relentless.
It does.
And I think it's kind of that internal, the kind of family dynamics of where you need to be, when, how much do we have to pay to get here, what clothes do we need, as you say. But then there's that kind of system that surrounds people that doesn't feel at the moment that entirely supports them to lessen that pressure. Like, why can't work finish slightly early for someone who needs to do the school pickup? Why can't they drop someone off a bit later if they need to do the nursery drop off? These kind of small changes you feel are completely within the gift of our current kind of economic and labour market systems, but don't always seem to work for families in the way that they would want them to.
And often just because we've always done it that way, or we can't let you do it because everybody will want to do it. And you don't find when they do that kind of thing that everybody does want to do it. I mean, we offer flexible working, family-friendly working for all of our team on the basis of that. I think when my girls were growing up, I missed far too much of their school shows and dancing and all those kind of things because I was working. And I was lucky I didn't have to worry about the costs of childcare in the same way as other people did. I was working in nursery management, and as part of my package I got some support with that kind of thing, but I still missed out on some of those things, and it's one of the things I'm really conscious of for our team, that we don't want people to miss out on that. So in a team of just under 200 people, we've got 50 different working patterns. But it is possible and it does work, and it doesn't mean that nobody wants to be in before 9 o'clock, because there are people that really do want to be in early and finish earlier, and it's just a case of having those conversations and being open and honest with your team about what you can do, isn't it?
And like you said, that idea of not doing things the same way you've always done them. You know, when I've been working in places where you needed to set rotas and do shifts, you know, this 10 years ago, we'd still do it by hand. Then kind of software comes in that can kind of help with that as well. So it's about investing as a business and being able to look at new ways that you can offer that flexibility.
Definitely, and parents are so used to juggling so much that actually the skills that they've got through that are so helpful in so many workplaces anyway. So it's great to be able to keep them within your workforce, and they're really valuable members of the team. So there's so many benefits all round really from that. I just can't understand. It doesn't make sense to me at all why more businesses don't do it. We're a ratio-driven business. We've got legal minimums of staff that have to be there at set times, but we still manage to do it. So if we can do it, I can't see why anybody can't, really.
I mean, you'd hope that kind of, I know the flexible work kind of agenda looks at COVID and the things that happened there, and it's not all about working at home and working remotely. But I do feel there is a shift in lots of jobs about how flexible employers are and what can happen. But what we might get to and what it looks like is you're going to have a kind of whole group of people who have great working conditions and good flexibility, and then a whole bunch of people bringing them kind of Uber Eats and Deliveroo, and kind of that you kind of divide the kind of labour force into people who have and have not got flexibility. So I really feel it really important that we kind of focus on those kind of lower paid industries, ones retail, hospitality, social care, areas that people can still work flexibly. And I think the childcare service that you have with 200 people of 50 different working patterns is a great example of how that can work. Yeah, definitely. It really does work. And I guess that kind of leads into some of the other things as well. So the modelling you've done suggested that 50,000 more parents needed to move into work and 20,000 more needed to do more hours. Is that right? Yeah. So this was back before the election, which feels like a very, very long time ago now, where we were kind of looking at, and this is called meeting the moment, like were political parties leading up to the election able to meet the moment and reduce child poverty to the levels that they'd all committed to by the Child Poverty Act. And what we looked at is like different mechanisms that different levers that you could pull to reduce child poverty. So increasing incomes via work or via social security. And what we found is when we put into the modelling the numbers of people moving into work, that'd be, as you say, 50,000 people supported into work, 20,000 people supported to have extra hours or higher pay, you would then reduce poverty by about 60,000 children and get the relative poverty rate to around about 14%. We added on a couple of different packages. We kind of added on social security, so increasing the Scottish Child Payment, creating new kind of payments for specific family types within the priority families, and you can kind of again engineer getting that number even lower. What we didn't do, and we were quite deliberate in this, was set out the deliberate policies that you would need to do to get to that number of people being supported into work. Because at the time we were kind of hoping that all the political parties would set out in their manifestos how in the next parliament that we're in right now, they would reach the 2030 poverty targets. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's not what we saw in the manifestos. And we didn't see nearly the kind of ambition on child poverty that we would have hoped for, despite some quite good rhetoric commitments. Yeah. We've kind of not seen the kind of follow through on policy just yet.
Yeah, and I think there was a lack of detail, wasn't there, in a lot of it? There were lots of people promising lots of things, and we're going to expand childcare, we're going to do this, we're going to, but not a lot of the actual mechanics of how that would work and how they would possibly achieve some of that, or the costings of it.
I think the childcare is such a good example of that within manifestos. So it's an area that voters care a lot about, parents care a lot about specifically. Everyone kind of wants more. Quite likes what they've got already. I think 1140 forever, its delivery problems is a popular policy that people like. And all the parties other than Reform, who didn't mention childcare at all in their manifesto, did have some commitment to expansion or kind of fixing what's already been delivered. So parents want that. I don't think what they've heard since is kind of going to reassure them that that's going to happen soon. Yeah. And I think especially for parents with young children who maybe voted thinking that there's going to be a childcare offer, I mean, we know how long 1140 takes to deliver. We know these things take time and should take time. There's a good chance that by the end of the parliament, we won't have parents who voted for a party based on a childcare commitment having the experience, getting to experience that childcare offer that eventually gets delivered. So it's obviously really important that we make sure that that offer does start at pace and we kind of get cracking on it, but also that it's designed really fairly and well, as you've discussed on previous podcasts. Yeah,
no, definitely, absolutely. And childcare isn't the entire solution, but it does help, definitely. I mean, we know that the families that come to our services, all 100% last year reported being better off financially. And then the next thing they talked about was they're less stressed because they've not got that worry of how can they pay a childcare bill and pay the gas bill and put food on the table, and all of those kind of challenges that families are facing, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think the cost is one point. Definitely families feel that cost. They want, when we did some research back in 2024 about it and did some polling with parents, they didn't just want to reduce their costs, they also wanted kind of more flexibility, but they also wanted that when they had that, they thought that would allow them to have more opportunities to progress in work as well. So not just get into work, but to progress, because that's such an important part of it, partly because parents are already working at such high levels. You know, the employment rate for parents with children under 5 is really high, higher than the average. So it's about working out ways where we can support parents to move on in their careers and be able to kind of earn more and kind of get into jobs that they want to be in, rather than just taking the one that kind of appears more flexible at the start, but there's probably less progression route.
Absolutely.
And I saw that a lot when I was working at H&M. I saw really good, say, visual merchandisers, people who dress the shop brilliantly and really kind of creative roles, but would only be able to kind of work 12, 20 hours a week. And then when a promotion opportunity came up, they wouldn't always be able to go for it, even though they were clearly the best candidate for it. And it was really difficult. Yeah. And having to design, we need to kind of design jobs and flexible childcare around that kind of situation
around it. When I was talking to Satvat when she was in from One Parent Families doing a podcast with us, we were talking about examples of over the school holidays and some of the parents that they're working with, that it's actually easier just to stop, to leave your job over the summer holiday period and then just find another one for when the children go back to school. And how can that possibly be the right thing for anybody? And it's clearly blocking progression in somebody's career, isn't it? Doing
Absolutely.
that, and just that constant uncertainty and being the new person in the team all the time.
And we have all the evidence about those kind of gaps in people's progression within their careers when they drop in, out of work. Those are the moments when things can kind of shift, and they can shift the wrong way for you. They can mean that you're not able to get back into work. But that childcare over the summer holidays is really challenging. Everyone is kind of looking at, we were even looking, my wife and I the other night, like she was Googling jobs that didn't work during the summer, because it's like, how are we going to balance full-time jobs, 2 kids when they go to school? It's really difficult.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge, definitely. It's such a long period of time, isn't it, over the summer that the children are off school. And we see so often families that take separate annual leave so they can cover some of it, and rope in relatives where they can and pay for what they have to pay for around all of that. But even if you can cover it that way, it's not the right thing, because it's stopping people spending quality family time together, isn't it?
I think if you were going to design an economy in a country that you wanted to live in, like in Scotland, that's probably not how you would have it set up, that people were like dreading the summer holidays and relieved when they were over. It's really important to have that time as a family, if you can and can afford it. I think it's really
totally
perverse.
No, absolutely, definitely. Oh, cool. And childcare doesn't always align with the hours that parents have to do either. So things around shifts and irregular evenings, weekends, we've never managed to come up with, although we offer flexible, people can book and pay what they need, and we can start that wee bit earlier. We've never quite managed to figure out the best way forward on the evenings and weekends stuff and things as well. Do you think that's a big part of the problem for some of the families that are...
Yeah, I think... I spoke earlier about the industries that we're talking about, and I think, so what is it? It's about, so there's 5 industries: hospitality, retail, manufacturing, social care and administrative services.
That doesn't surprise me. That's where most of our families using the nurseries come from.
So that's where the flexibility is needed. But those industries also contain about 70% of the, 7 in 10 of those in those industries are in work poverty. So you need to then think about, if a childcare system is to be designed to reduce poverty, it needs to work for those industries. And we know for lots of those parts that it's shift patterns. So how can you create a childcare system that fits into that, while also at the same time, as a kind of country and as a government, focusing on what the industries are doing? There's that demand side of that labour, the employers, how can they kind of meet in the middle so you get the care and the hours that kind of work together to make sure that everyone gets the best out of it?
And it's getting the balance right on that, isn't it? Because it's not necessarily about, we want overnight nurseries and we want all of that, because is that right for children? And there's obviously increased risk and things with that kind of thing. So there's a lot to think about that. What's the best experience for our youngest citizens as well, isn't there?
I think it's like constantly that kind of, not tension, but it's the things that we have to consider, that we've got a childcare kind of agenda that has different kind of outcomes in mind. So obviously child safety, child well-being, education, but then supporting families and supporting people progress in the labour market. And we need to obviously work out ways that those policy aims can all not be in tension and be delivered in a way that works for everybody. I don't think it's beyond the ken of us in Scotland to do that. I just think it takes time, and there needs to be balances and trade-offs within that as well.
And joined up working, doesn't there? Because so often there's still siloed working, isn't there? Where policy and things are designed, and some of that can be really challenging. So
I think I sometimes, I don't know if it's a bit weird, but I sometimes think of it, how it gets designed at the moment, and lots of policy areas are like that. It's a bit like a mirror where people bring their own experiences and their own kind of agendas and look in and want to see that reflected back at them. And I do that as a parent, but I do that as a kind of policy person as well. But where we kind of want to get to is that you've got those wee mirrors, but they're on like a disco ball. I was thinking of like the ABC big disco ball, where every bit of light is reflected back in a kind of way that adds to the whole system. And I think that's what we're kind of hoping to get to, this kind of idea where every kind of aim that we're looking at for the agenda is kind of treated with respect and can be delivered as well to families.
And what do families tell you that they need?
I think we've done this on surveys, we've done this in kind of focus groups and with our lived experience groups, and it doesn't take very long for any conversation to come back to childcare. And it comes back to childcare and it comes back to housing. Those are two things, but childcare,
such big things in people's lives, aren't they?
Exactly. They're just massive, and they're also the biggest costs, right? At the moment, such big costs. So with childcare, it's clear people want more. They just want more. Like 9 in 10 parents, when we did a kind of representative survey of it back in 2024, wanted more childcare. We looked at how much they wanted, and they clearly wanted slightly less for their younger children. They want to be spending more time with they want to spend more time with their kids all the time, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But they felt more confident in having children in childcare for more hours as they got older. So they wanted I think we've got 25 hours a week for their 1 and 2 year olds.
Yeah.
And they wanted about 35 hours a week for their 3 and 4 year olds. And they wanted it to be, top quality and all the things that you would expect from that. But in that same report, when we looked at what they wanted and we tried to model then what that cost would be to do exactly what the parents wanted, I think we came out about £3 billion additional funding each year, which is quite difficult.
Yeah, it's a lot of money, isn't it? That's a lot of money.
And it's not something that we would probably be campaigning for.
Yeah, no.
But they want that. And I think that's completely natural. And I think there is ways that you can design systems that do give families the support to get there, but maybe doesn't look exactly like 1140. It includes flexible hours that you just pay for what you use.
Yeah.
But also includes like a targeting at those who need it most.
Yes, that's what I was going to ask you next, about what your thoughts around universalism and how that money is distributed are.
Yeah. I don't know, it feels weird. It's like always, I don't know if we love universalism, right?
Yeah,
universalism
of course.
It's why 1140 is liked. It's why people like museums, because they're there for everybody, and it's designed in that way. And there's no stigma to accessing it and all of this. But I think the fiscal reality and the need kind of point to that not being where we need to go next with childcare, for early years childcare. I think the cost of it should be high. We should pay a lot for childcare.
Absolutely, because it's expensive to deliver. Yeah,
it's expensive to deliver, and parents don't want a cheap childcare.
No,
they don't
not
want,
at all. No.
They want affordable childcare, but so it needs to be expensive, but it shouldn't be too expensive. And I think there is this idea, and I think the SNP kind of talked about it as well. We talked about in 2024 about an income-based contributory system.
Yeah.
So you pay according to what your current family income is, so that you're paying different amounts for different people, but the service is still the same.
Yeah.
There's a universal service that you can access, but you pay different amounts to access it, and it needs to be done in a different way from the eligible twos was, because as we all know, that wasn't universalism, but that also felt stigmatizing.
It absolutely, and it still does. I think does.
I think I heard you talking. You said there's like quite there's still an under uptake, or whatever the word is.
Yes, that's right.
Right. And I think that is partly because it's not universal, partly because it was rolled out badly.
Yeah.
So we don't want to we've learned that lesson, but we know also that universalism is going to cost too much. But there's still loads of tensions within that. Like I'm still not totally. There's still trade-offs, because while I'm saying the priority should be families with low incomes or people looking to get to work or that, like the gender equality aspect of childcare is
of course,
paramount in the debate. It allows mainly women to reduce the amount of caring responsibilities they have to enter the labour market, or do anything, training, whatever, relax, do whatever. And if we're constraining that additional funding to a smaller group of people, that doesn't inevitably mean that there's a tension with gender equality, because it's not like you don't stop caring about gender equality once you get to a certain point in the pay scale.
No, not at all. No.
So I think that is a genuine difficulty for us. But on the whole, I think the next stage has to be low income focused.
Yeah. I think I was looking the other day. I keep hearing wicked problem thrown about, and I think childcare actually, and child poverty, it really is a wicked problem, because you do one thing to solve it, it impacts other things, doesn't it? Just as you were describing there. So if you go down that route, well, how does that impact that route? And there's no one simple solution to this.
And we shouldn't treat childcare like that, right?
No.
It does feel like that kind of multifaceted solution, because you've got the workforce, you've got the labour market, potential that can be taken up. You've got, the equality aspect of it, and you've got the children's outcome aspect of it. So it does have lots of facets, but it's never going to fix a broken labour market or an unequal society. No. But it needs to be pushing towards this kind of society that we want to live in, rather than just thinking, well, put some more hours into this. Because it's not like we're the first country to like look at this stuff, right?
No,
like,
not
loads
at all.
of countries
No,
have interesting stuff.
Yeah.
I saw there was like in France. I'm not going to say the French name for it because it'll be embarrassing. But it's like crèche AVIP, and it's this idea of integration of employability services and childcare services, where a certain proportion is reserved for people who are job seeking and want that support.
Yeah.
Or there's like different. And there's loads of different models that we've looked at that. It doesn't mean you need to just do what we've done before.
No. And I guess, I mean, that kind of thing makes so much sense, doesn't it? Because you can have the best employability programme in the world, but if you've not got somebody to look after your children when you come out the other end of it, you can't take up a job.
Absolutely. So and I don't want
to
not to distract the conversation, but we did put out another report a couple of weeks ago or a month ago with Fraser Valander that looked at that idea of like, even if you have the best employability, even if you have the best childcare, where are the jobs in Scotland and where are the good jobs? And we saw this massive range of disparity of how many people are looking for jobs and how many jobs are available. Yeah. So Dundee, where you obviously operate, or started, I think.
That's right, first site,
we saw there that it was like for every job available, there was 35 people who would want to work and who were looking for work. Like,
that's huge,
that's crazy.
Isn't it?
Like
it's absolutely huge.
Childcare is a massive part of the solution for people for that, but there needs to be a real debate about what kind of economic growth, economic development policies come in and surround the place that has those kind of challenges.
Totally, yeah.
And too often it feels like that isn't always connected to childcare.
Yeah, I think there is a big disconnect, definitely. And it also links in the rural areas, doesn't it, that are losing, their populations are dropping. And they need people there, but they can't stay because there's no childcare and there's no jobs, and there's so all of that kind of interconnects, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and you've got a parliament in Scotland that has, representation from all over, and that depopulation agenda is there.
And a drop in birth rate as well, because people can't afford to have children. I mean, it's crazy.
But then you look at what's been debated in Parliament. So I think you talked on the other podcast about there's a childcare debate.
Yes.
Which is good to see. I don't know if there was much, that you thought was new or exciting about that. But the following week there was an economy debate. A debate about growing Scotland's economy. Yeah. And childcare got one kind of passive mention in this massive long debate. And you're like, the agendas are tightly linked. It needs to be reflected back.
It absolutely does, doesn't it? They really do need to connect those up and work together on them, see where that can take us. So,
especially if that's, it's got the big workforce, about 45,000 people work in childcare in Scotland. Twice as many as the renewable sector. Obviously, that's an incredibly important sector, but it's a big workforce. If we're going to expand it, it's going to expand the workforce as well.
It totally is.
A key part of the economy, not just on the kind of what it allows parents to do, but...
No, it creates jobs, doesn't it? Definitely, yeah. And actually, we need to have a real focus on that too, because those jobs need to be good jobs. So they need to have the fair pay and the fair hours and all of those things, but those career progression opportunities and the right entry points. And for too long, and still sometimes we get that sort of hair or care approach for less academic pupils at school. You've got to go and be a beautician or go and play with children. And it's just not like that anymore. The qualifications required to work in childcare are challenging, and the managers are degree level roles.
Absolutely.
So there is a lot to it, and a lot more workforce planning, I think, needed, because certainly when 1140 rolled out, it caused a huge workforce capacity gap, and local authorities increasing their own number of services were scooping up good staff from...
how does that work? How do you think that works in an expansion, that parity between the sectors? That seems like you speak to people who get quite frustrated with that.
It's a real challenge. There is a real challenge. I mean, I think there's something about the way the funding is administered at the moment, because it goes from government via local authorities before it comes to PVI, so the private, voluntary and independent providers. And every local authority does that differently. They pay different amounts. They top slice differently. So there's a real... It's a bit of a mess, to be honest with you, the way that is managed. So there's possibly a case for that being managed in a different way. But then you come to the pay scales and the workforce. I mean, we are a living wage employer, and we keep a differential for our staff that have qualifications and further experience. But it's really hard to be sustainable and do that. Really, really difficult.
National insurance contributions,
exactly.
like lots of things. Yeah.
All of these costs that are going up. And it does feel like there is an argument for a national pay scale around the sector, and funding that then supports that to enable people to be paid a fair wage for working with our youngest citizens. You sometimes still see outside some of the supermarket chains, they've got their board up advertising for staff, and they can sometimes be paying more than we're able to pay as a real living wage employer and all of those things. And you think it's quite shameful. My youngest daughter, when she was at uni, went to work at McDonald's she was a shift supervisor or something with them, but she was only young. She was only 18, 19-year-old, and was earning more than our qualified practitioners in a childcare service. I was actually really ashamed of that. But there's nothing more that I could do. We are, like I say, living wage and differentials, and I can't take it any higher than that. And it's really, really challenging. Trying to keep, obviously, the cost down for parents too in the services that we operate. So.
And parents will see that kind of differently, right? People will understand that they need to the wages need to go up, but they will also be facing their own pressures. But I think that differential point is so important with the living wage, and as it goes up further, that must make it incredibly difficult for employers to be doing that. Yeah, definitely it does. And you have to look at other areas of the business that you can save money, basically to enable that. And of course, the workforce, the team, they are your prime and your best resource. So it's the thing you need to invest most in. Yeah, because if you don't, right, you've got that turnover issue.
Well, exactly.
And we see that as being quite difficult on the low pay sector.
Definitely.
Turnover, but then that cost to business to recruit and hire is not offset, right? So
no, it's not. No, and it impacts. So if you've got that turnover, it's impacted on the quality of provision as well, and the relationships and attachment, because children do form those attachments to their key workers and things, and to have that constant change is really unsettling for them. So, we've seen it. We've even had it at our kids' nurseries, where you go through a period and it all seems to come in like a good couple of months. It's a bit of a domino effect. And it is really unsettling for the kids, and they kind of take that home. And it must make an impact on how they spend their day as well. So it's really, really important that if we are expanding childcare, that we have a really clear workforce strategy that sits behind that to enable the workforce to be fairly valued and respected, and to have those opportunities to progress in their careers.
And what's your kind of probability on that being the case on the expansion? Are you hearing the right things and seeing the right things happening at this early stage? That's been considered. Sorry, I know you're meant to be asking.
No, it's great. It's conversation. It's conversation. Conversation's brilliant. I'm not sure that we are seeing enough thought into that. I think there is some work going on behind the scenes in government around workforce and things, and I know there's been some work done. I think Nesta were doing it around the evolving role of a childcare practitioner, because there's much more family support and things involved in that role now. They're often the first person that spots there's a problem. Families are facing challenges, so how do they deal with that? And so there's certainly some work around that. And there's been the recent consultation around school-age childcare, and are the regulations and qualifications, should they be the same for school age as they are for nursery? Is it different? It is different. You're working with older children. So there certainly seems to be some work going on around that. The biggest issue is the cost of it and the funding for it, and that, how do you bring those salaries up? Because nobody's saying bring the local authority salaries down. We don't want people to be paid less. We want to aspire to be bringing our practitioners up to that level, or as close to that as we can.
And is there ever any chat about, so if childcare works really well and you be able to support parents getting into work and better work and more income, then the tax take from that doesn't go back to Scottish government, and can almost be a victim of your own success. So like, if childcare works, people get out into work.
Yep.
In some countries, that money can get put back in, but I suppose if that doesn't work in quite that way in Scotland, it's quite difficult to make that kind of self-sustaining argument without having to kind of rearrange kind of, fiscal agreements or fiscal frameworks. Does that kind of come into the chat?
We hear that kind of thing in conversations, because we will talk sometimes about, of course, it's better for people to be working and earning and contributing to the economy. But then if it's not coming directly, then you can see that. So it does. And our sort of viewpoint on that is it supports local economy. People are spending in the local areas where they live and work. So it's certainly boosting that. There might not be the same coming in on the tax side of it to be used locally. So it's certainly something to be considered as part of that. But again, it feels like big change needed to do that. Things that are possibly, out of our scope, I suppose, to change. And no, you can't, can you? But it does matter. We're just about to. I've just been working on drafts for a piece of research actually that covers some of that return on investment, and if we support parents by enabling them to access flexible, affordable, high quality childcare that allows them to enter or progress in work, what is the return on that in future? And it'll need to be over a period of time so that we can look at that. To understand that. But we're just looking at doing that at the moment with Robertson Trust and Glasgow Caledonian. So hopefully we should get some good evidence out of that too. So, but it does impact the local economy. The wee local shops that are beside our service in Dundee are busy. Parents are in and out of them all the time and things as they're dropping off. So that local boost in just people having a bit more money in their pocket that they can spend, it's got to be better for an area. Certainly the building we're in Dundee was derelict and the ground's all overgrown. It was a horrible mess in the middle of that community, and now it's a thriving, busy, all fully renovated building, and there's the sound of young children out playing, and it brings to life that part of the area. So
that sounds great.
So it's good stuff, definitely. So, and beyond childcare, what other policy changes do you think would make the biggest difference in reducing child poverty?
Well, childcare is about income. Child poverty is about income. Right. It can't get away from that. There's so many things about the experience of child poverty that can get measured elsewhere and are vitally important, but it has to be about income in a lot of ways. So I think there does need to be still a conversation about the child payment, about its increasing, about it being targeted at families who need the support most. We need to ensure that it keeps going up with inflation and make sure it's still keeping people out of poverty in the way that it's doing. We need to be making sure that the employability services are kind of interacting really well with the kind of other services that they touch. So that would be childcare as well, economic development, making sure that we've got this a kind of clear idea of what we want Scotland to look like and what we want local areas to look like and what they're all about. Whether that's Dundee or if it's Strathbungo or whatever, however, what size of place you're having, those kind of clear ideas and connecting the policy. And then there's also a clear need for real energy and fire in the housing kind of sector. Like housing costs are obviously a big part of poverty, and one of the reasons why Scotland's had a lower child poverty rate than the rest of the UK and England over the years is traditionally because of its higher proportion of people living in social houses. So we've got that head start almost. Not that it's a competition, but we could see that lead kind of literally crumble as the housing stock depletes. So we need to have more houses, including in the private sector, as well. So I mean, those are just a couple of them that we would be kind of talking regularly about at JRF.
And are there any examples from places outside of Scotland then that we could be looking to say, actually, if we could do something like that, that would make a difference?
Well, I think on the childcare, I think we have a few. I think we have, I spoke about France, about Sweden, Finland, that there's these ideas. And often when you say that in the policy conversation, you're going, a different economy. There's lots more money over there already. And I think that's fine. But it can be a target point. It's about the vision that you want to set, and how you get there might take longer or might be different. But having those examples are really important.
Definitely, And it's always good, isn't it, to be looking externally as well. If you're constantly looking internally, then you're never going to develop or have aspirations.
And it's hard because you'll be as busy as anybody doing the thing that's right in front of you. But there does need to be occasionally lifting our heads up and looking at the world to see where we're at. And the other part is to also not be too discouraged. Because there's a lot of reasons why Scotland's a very good place to live. There's a lot of natural resources. There is a kind of decent consensus about what it means to be happy and healthy and how that should work. there's all like significant problems, but there is a lot to look forward to and a lot of excitement. And I think the expansion of the childcare offer should be like that. It shouldn't be, oh, we've made a lot of mistakes with 1140. And that be the frame of the conversation. The frame of the conversation is parents need more support and more childcare, and we've got a commitment, a £500 million commitment to deliver it. Let's deliver it really well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I was talking to the leader of a charity from London. I'm doing Acumen Fellowship at the moment, so we were together on that last week. And she was talking about the importance of that abundance mindset. So rather than always thinking about the problem and the difficulty, actually think of all these opportunities and what other good things we've got going for us and how we can maximise that. And that's exactly what you described there, isn't it?
Yeah, and that is, but I mean, I'm as guilty or more guilty than everyone of not doing that. Like I get quite down with a lot of this, right? And it's quite, it's difficult to kind of do that. But if we don't, it's a recipe for disaster. If we keep our heads down, it's going to be really difficult, and we shouldn't.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We even say, actually, talking about that, looking internally and looking externally, for some of our practitioners who've perhaps come to us, done their qualifications with us, have only worked with us, it's really good to get out and see other things. So we try and arrange swaps so they can go and see other services or visits. And because if you only know what you only know, you can't think big and think beyond that, can you?
Absolutely. And I think that cross-disciplinary thing is really important as well. So that idea of there's a difference between someone who does policy and someone who does practice. So you talk about childcare policy, but you've never been in a nursery. They need to kind of break down those barriers and remove any kind of hierarchy within that as well, because I think that's really damaging. And not just damaging, but it can give you so much more if you go and speak to people and are out and about. And it's the same with, it's not the reason that we work with people with lived experience. We need to, obviously, people who are using the services need to be central to the design of them. But just getting out of your kind of day-to-day work routine is really helpful.
Definitely. No, it's such an important thing. It really, really is. So are you optimistic that Scotland can meet its child poverty targets? Or
well, I mean, I don't know. I think the real challenge is that we've just heard in the last couple of weeks that we're reviewing the child poverty targets.
Yeah, I know.
So for me, that throws up like some kind of intellectual and emotional and existential kind of questions. Firstly, it feels like we're changing them because we're not meeting them.
Yep.
And that is unacceptable.
Yeah, feels inherently wrong, doesn't it?
That feels really difficult to accept. There's also seems to be some conversation about how valid or otherwise kind of income-based targets are, which feels like crazy because of course poverty is about income.
Of course it is.
And we've heard that income-based targets will remain, but it's important to kind of understand why they should remain. You know, they are a good standard. They are an internationally recognised, like people all over the world use them. They've got good time series. We can compare ourselves to others. You know, it measures the right thing because poverty is about income. And also it's driven action. Like we've seen, I don't know if we would have had the child poverty, Scottish child payment at the same rate as we did without the targets. Yeah. So that's really important. And we've got the counterfactual. We saw what happened when the UK government ditched its child poverty targets. Yeah. We can't like sit by and let that happen again if that's the kind of music. And I don't think that is, because the First Minister said eradicating child poverty is his number one priority. Yeah. But we need to be guarded against slipping into the same thing that happened during the coalition government. I mean, the child poverty targets seem to be, from the Scottish government, seem to be set up in response to that. It seemed to be look, we're different. Yes. We're prioritising this. The Parliament stood up and voted for it. We need to get some of that kind of courage and commitment back from the politicians. So am I optimistic about meeting the targets? Unsure, because I don't know where the targets are going to go. But we're incredibly far off them right now. There's 200,000 kids in poverty in Scotland. It's unacceptable.
It's just shameful.
It is shameful.
Oh, it's awful.
And you see it. You can look out the window and you can see it, and you can feel it, and it touches so many lives in Scotland. Yeah. So everything must be done to do that. So whether or not the targets change or what they are, and we'll be very involved in the detail of that if possible, the biggest demand is that more action is taken. Yeah. Like it is the action and the policy that needs to really step up a gear, because we've seen what happens when we don't do that. from when the child poverty targets were introduced and the Child Poverty Act started, it felt like we gave ourselves a very long, slow start before things started to tick.
Yeah.
When the child payment came in, etc. So we almost started 3 or 4 years behind. We can't let that happen again.
No.
We need to crack on with what we know works, improving incomes, supporting the reduction of costs such as housing. And then if we are making new targets, make them demanding, make them stretching. It's not bad to fail. It's pretty bad not to try.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's that whole, like, you shoot for the moon, and if you don't get there, you'll land in the stars, isn't it?
Yeah,
so,
that idea,
set it
as long
high,
as you're trying to building a rocket to get to those stars rather than just kind of gazing up at them.
Yeah.
Because, we've seen that happen before, and, there's a little bit of target fatigue probably.
Yeah.
But they have driven action. They measure the right thing. So I think we
you have to have a target. You have to have something that is a measurable point, don't you? You can't just say, we'll just aim to stop that. Well, to stop what? You need something that is the...
Yeah, and even if they're not perfect, like there's flaws with relative poverty as a target, but we've got the absolute poverty, we've got other measures alongside that, we don't need to aim for perfection. We need to kind of aim for action and reduction of poverty.
Yeah, because the children that are living in poverty really don't care about us aiming for perfection, do they?
Yeah,
they
that
care
is,
about
that
being fed and having a coat.
Yeah, that's what's kind of killing me at the moment a bit. It's like, it feels we've taken a couple of steps back.
Yeah.
We saw the Tackling Child Poverty delivery plan at the tail end of the last government, and it was so disappointing. We called it timid, but that doesn't probably come close to it. Like, we were really quite angry about the lack of vision to get to 2030 at that point.
Yeah.
So much so that we kind of spoke to a lawyer and published our legal advice saying it could have actually acted illegally or in contravention of their own act. So we need to kind of get back to that idea of, we've got a plan, let's do it.
Let's do this. Yeah.
Because
definitely.
otherwise we're just going to kind of faff, and that is very frustrating. That idea of, we need to make the case again to have stretching income targets, or we need to have stretching action, all this kind of stuff. And then, sorry to go on about it, but having to see that kind of plan and then go and have to front up to like our lived experience groups. So we've got this group we work with, our great then Poverty Scotland group, and they kind of expect us to come and say what the plan has and what's happening. And you're kind of going, bad news, like, this is not what we want. We've kind of failed in our kind of efforts to hold government to account, to make sure that they're going to make a difference and make big at scale changes. So that felt really difficult, and I feel like we're still at that uncertainty point. I do expect things will become clearer and better, but we all need to be kind of laser focused on that as well, and not let anyone off the hook, because we've got a difficult parliament. There's no two ways around it. It's not the same parliament we had when the Child Poverty Act passed. You've got a social justice and social security committee that's got to look at this, and it all feels a little bit difficult. Yeah, but optimistic.
Good.
Kind of.
So if you were in the First Minister's seat in this early stage of the new parliament, and you didn't have horrible restrictions stopping you doing things, what would be the one thing that you say would make a huge difference?
I don't know. One thing. I was talking like, a day's a long time in the First Minister's chair. Like, you could maybe do a few things. You could do a lot, couldn't you? But I think some of the stuff I talked about earlier, it would have to be around that. Like, if it is about poverty that we're talking about, kind of click your fingers and get into action on housing. Like, get that social housing built. Get all the get the right things in the right place, and squeeze like every penny out of that public pound that you're spending, because that also helps with construction jobs, can help with net zero targets, all of that. So that's the clear way. But also be really focused on that kind of between government conversations. Like, the UK government and the Scottish government clearly could work significantly closer. Like, what is the employability offer and the DWP's job centre offer? How do they kind of match up and support people? Do people know or care which government is giving them the support? Probably not.
I don't think
they just want the support. But the DWP is the single biggest public facing service within Scotland that people will see from the UK government, and like, it's probably letting itself down a bit. People you spoke to that have used the DWP might not think it's done as good a job. And I think if I was First Minister, I'd be speaking with my colleagues in Westminster and working out how we can kind of have a plan to reduce child poverty that involves all our agencies.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah. And interestingly, DWP, we found out recently that about some of the childcare fund that they have to help people, but it's so poorly.
Exactly.
People don't know about it.
And they do have these things.
Yeah, they've got these things.
The policy's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably not big enough, not at scale, but parents don't know about it.
But people don't know about it, yeah. So, I mean, it's just no use to anybody if they don't know about it, is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, like lots of these things, there's barriers that either it's difficult to access or you don't know about it, and all of those kind of things. So it's also just spreading the word and telling people, isn't it, and making it available and accessible to people, and bringing it to where they are.
Absolutely. Have you answered that question before? I don't think I've on the kind of First Minister's seat for a day. Or what's the kind of favourite answer you've had, or like what would you?
I don't know how I would answer that, actually, and I probably should have thought about that. And
thought,
no, it's interesting. I think for our sector, it would be something around the workforce. I think it's so critical around, if it's going to expand, we need to be able to bring in more good quality people that want to come in and progress a career in the sector, and we need to be able to treat them fairly and pay them fairly. And I really do feel that they're underpaid. They are predominantly female. It is a predominantly female workforce. We find a situation where people, it's predominantly female and predominantly young female, and they like children. So they'll come in and work for a few years and they'll have their own family, and they can't afford to come back to work. And you think, how utterly ridiculous is that the sector you work in and you're qualified for and needs more people in its workforce, and you can't come back to work because you have children and you can't afford childcare. So for me, if it was around childcare sector and what we do, it would be, let's find a way to look after our workforce, because they're key to us growing this, and they're the people that are on the ground providing that support to the children and the families, and they're so good at it. They do spot the little things quickly, and they can offer the help, and they can signpost and go with people to get help that they need, and all of those things. It is an evolving role. So that's
a good one. I might steal that then, as well.
So cool, good. Jack, thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to say that you haven't had an opportunity to say?
No, just thank you to you, and I've probably mentioned this to my children's childcare providers that I'm doing this podcast. So
did you? Yeah,
I did.
Cool,
yeah, so
good.
They'll be watching this,
good
and
stuff.
just say thank you to them as well. Because they do amazing work under really difficult circumstances.
There are so many fantastic childcare providers out there. There really, really are, and children are getting such wonderful opportunities. So there are positive things, 100%. Definitely, lots and lots of positives.
I mean, it is sometimes can be the best part of their day. Or their week, bits, things that they do at their nurseries. So
at the nursery,
it's beautiful.
It's my favourite bit. My job doesn't involve a lot of time with the children anymore, but the days that I do get to go and play with the children in some of the services, it's just a joy, and it reminds you why you do what you do. So,
they're not the wicked problem.
So no, they are absolutely not. No, they are not.
Great.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you.